It's time. It's time to turn the TV off and listen. That noise, what is it? Maybe it's only crickets. Maybe it's distant music. Maybe people are dancing somewhere not far from here, the beloved among them. Out into the street, we need to investigate, find out what's here, even if it's only crickets. So taking a comfortable seat. And when you have your feet flat, your knees at a right angle, sitting straight in the chair, straightening the back as best you can, just leaning back and letting the shoulders fall. And then softening everything, softening the muscles in the face, around the jaw, around the eyes, and in the forehead. You might wake up with terrible headache from gnashing our teeth all night. Just giving everything a break. Stretching the neck a little bit. To the side, and then always, like in yoga, to the other side. Always achieving that balance. If you can, just lowering your chin a little bit closer to your chest, and then back again, so that you feel that tiny stretch in the back of your neck. And then lengthening the neck just a little bit, just a millimeter. So now you've made an opening. And coming down into the chest, into the area of the heart, with your eyes closed. Just letting all the armor fall away. Whatever quarrels we woke up with, irritations and annoyances, just to sort of half laugh and smile and feel that smile in your heart. And if you woke up troubled by the onslaught of news, the bad news that we hear and that we fill our days with, to just internally bow to that. Say, as Tara Brach says, there's room for this too. And you might feel that little beam of light that's holding everything up between the heart and that space between your eyebrows. And put your awareness there between your eyebrows. And then last of all, just softening the belly. Letting that protectiveness fall away. This is the time. This is the space we make in the inferno for what's not inferno. And now we're in it. Just luxuriating in that breathing. 4 counts in, pausing a little bit at the top, and then 5 counts out. Do that 3 more times. Each time just expanding your sense of the room that you're in, from the body to the room, to the house, to the street, to the woods. And one more breath. It's time. It's time to turn the TV off and listen. That noise, what is it? Maybe it's only crickets. Maybe it's distant music. Maybe people are dancing somewhere not far from here, the beloved among them. Out in the street, we need to investigate, find out what's there, even if it's only crickets. Once again, this poem is by Gregory Orr, and like all of his poems, it's deceptively simple, but it goes very deep. I had a cricket in my house 2 weeks ago. I even wrote a note that somehow this cricket was going to come into these talks. I just knew it because I couldn't find it. It was right by my desk, and I was about to go on a Zoom call, and suddenly it was like there was a coach's whistle going off in the room, just as loud as you can imagine. And this tiny creature, stridulating, as it's called, was really irritating me and annoying me. So I'm looking around the room trying to find it, and I actually heard it coming from inside the socket on the wall, inside the plug. And so I'm looking into the plug, trying to see if there's a cricket that has crawled in there, some microscopic cricket inside the plug. Where is it? It turns out that it was behind a little Merry Christmas sign that my mother gave me years ago that was just above that plug, and it was the tiniest baby cricket you could imagine. And I managed to take it in my hand and put it outside. This cricket, as annoying as it was a kind of uh, Noel cricket, a little Jesus cricket that made me suddenly aware of my irritation. But it was also serving as a kind of mindfulness bell. I don't know if you remember the Courtney Camp poem that we talked about last year around this time. We were saying how you could take something that annoys you, like a telephone, like Thich Nhat Hanh describes at the monastery at Plum Village. The telephone would go off and he would feel this little edge. And so what he did was turn that telephone into a bell that reminded him, I'm here. Let's all stop and remember I'm here. So when the telephone went off, it was, instead of being an annoyance, uh, a baby Jesus cricket saying again and again, remember that you're here. Remember that you're here. So this is what happens in Gregory Orr's poem. It's time. The time has come for what? Time has come to investigate. The key word in this poem, the operant word, is investigation, to find out what's here. His mindfulness bell is something that can't even be named. Maybe it's crickets. Maybe it's distant music. Maybe it's people dancing somewhere not far from here, the beloved among them. But there's a feeling of separation from whatever that music is calling us to. And so it's a poem a little bit about exile. Last night in class, Greg Orr came up because we were talking about our own points of exile as writers. I was speaking about this to a group of graduate students in my translation class. We were looking at how all of these poets that we read in translation, these great poets of the 20th century, mostly Neruda and Czesław Miłosz and Paul Celan, all experienced some kind of metaphorical or literal exile. And that exile itself is what transformed them into the great poets that they became. And somehow they took that being thrust out onto the margins and made that the vehicle to their awareness, to their being aware and becoming and fulfilling their promise as a poet. And as many of you know, this is exactly what happened to Gregory Orr. He was 12 years old when, in a terrible freak accident, he killed his own brother, where his brother was standing behind him, and he shot accidentally and turned around and realized that he had mortally injured him. His father was a doctor, and in the course of the years that followed, the doctor father blamed himself for what happened, and there was a terrible silence that overtook the house. And in those years of silence, Greg explains in the many writings that he has done on this subject that he felt that ultimately he couldn't speak about this, that it became anathema to even bring it up in conversation. His father, when he went away to college, gave him 1,000 pills to take with him. But ultimately, what saved his life, he says, was poetry. So I bring this up today because I want us to think about that moment when we were thrust out of our belonging. This is something that a teacher named Jonathan Faust talks about, our break with belonging. We're all here doing this work, like the graduate students last night who are doing a similar kind of work as writers, because we experienced this break with belonging. I mean, all of us as humans have experienced the break with belonging because we were born into this world and we were separated suddenly from everything that we knew, this womb world where we had everything that we needed in our itselfness. And then we were broken from that and we came into this world. And further, we were broken from all of the other knowns, and further and further and further. And we have a further break in front of us that we know about as humans, which makes us special, which is our inevitable deaths. So our whole life is about dealing with this cricket sound in the background that's saying, you're broken from, you're broken from, you're broken from. But at the same time, it's a voice like in Orr's poem that's calling us home, that's calling us to investigate what that is, that's calling us to try to maybe to a certain extent name what that is for each of us, but also to just sit with its namelessness, because that's okay too. Whatever it is that's calling you, it's both outside you and inside you at the same time. He says, we're going out into the street to investigate, but all the same, we're also going inside to try to find out what it is and to try to grasp with broken words themselves, broken from the source of their real meanings, what that is, to try to name those things. I want to just say a few words about Greg's story because it comes up in an article that he wrote in the New York Times 10 years ago, when in the news there was this piece about a girl who had accidentally killed her shooting instructor in Las Vegas. And he had this tremendous feeling of compassion for the girl. And he says that 4 things happened for him when his own accident took place. The first one was that there was a breakdown of the fantasy world that he had been living in. He felt all of this power and this control holding the gun. And as soon as the accident occurred, all of that broke away. So it's like turn the TV off and listen. He says that it was like the set of some cartoon world that he had been living in, and the gunshot just blew a hole in it and destroyed all of it. And he felt himself standing in a completely unrecognizable universe. The second thing is that he began to search. Maybe he would never have searched, but he began now to search for that thing that could sustain him in this unrecognizable world. And for him, it was poetry. He says, part of my luck was to discover poetry, which has sustained me through a lifetime. And sustained him through what? It sustained him through the silence that he experienced within his family. He instructs parents who have to sit with their children's pain to speak and not blame themselves, because he explains, and I think so poignantly in this article, which I'll share with you all when I send out my newsletter, he explains that the silence of his parents hurt him further. And so to speak and to do your best not to blame yourself for accidents which happen. And it's this wonderful moment where he releases them in the article. He says, sometimes blaming ourselves feels safer than this realization that the world is an unpredictable and even dangerous place, but self-blaming and shame isolate and shrivel the human spirit. So let go of that blame. And the last, which is hard for me to read because it just bursts me open. He's thinking about the girl, and his instructions are just hold them, just hold them. And this also, he says, is a deep longing out of my own. my own long ago shame and isolation, that someone larger and trusted by her, someone who pretends to understand this bewildering world, will hold her and give her permission to feel what she feels, and in some way beyond words, give her the courage to endure what she must endure. So I have a little personal prayer based on those 4 instructions, and I'm going to share that with you. It's time. It's time to turn the TV off and listen. That noise, what is it? Maybe it's only crickets. Maybe it's distant music. Maybe people are dancing somewhere not far from here, the beloved among them. Out into the street, we need to investigate, find out what's there, even if it's only crickets. So taking a comfortable seat, getting back into that space where everything softens and you feel that beam connecting your heart to that space of awareness here in your forehead. And everything else is just hanging loosely on that beam. And just say this little blessing to the other, that I may hear them and investigate the causes of their suffering, that I may hold them in the bewildering world, that I may give them permission to feel what they feel, that I may tender them the courage to endure what they must endure, that I may hear them, that I may hold them, that I may give them permission to feel what they feel, that I may tender them the courage. And then the blessing for the self in reverse, that I may speak and investigate the causes of suffering, that I may hold myself in the bewildering world, that I may give myself permission to feel what I feel, that I may find in myself the courage to endure what I must endure, that I may speak, that I may love myself, hold myself in a bewildering world, that I may permit myself to feel what I feel. that I may be courageous. What is that voice calling you home? What is that voice calling you to find out what's here? What's here? What's here? One more deep breath. Pausing at the top and then exhaling to 5. It's time. It's time to turn the TV off and listen. That noise, what is it? Maybe it's only crickets. Maybe it's distant music. Maybe people are dancing somewhere not far from here, the beloved among them. Out into the street, we need to investigate, find out what's here, even if it's only crickets.